for me, every shoot that I do is I go in and I want that shoot to be the best shoot of my career.
We have Stefan Randholm, who's a Swedish photographer and videographer here in Marbella. So welcome, Stefan. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you very much. Yes, thanks for having me here. Yes, Stefan Randholm. I've been in Marbella since 2003. I've lived in Spain since 1994. Well settled here, Spanish family. I landed in Marbella because my previous line of work, I was a management consultant working with supply chains, management coaching. I was coaching management teams in blue chip companies and providing education to them and their teams and helping them implement change programs. That took a lot of traveling. When we had our son and he was 2 years old, I decided to change path a little bit to be more home and be with my son. So I decided to try and stay here. The reason we initially came to Marbella, though, was because it was close to an airport, close to a major airport, obviously. So, but as I decided to become more of a present father, I just, I picked up my previous more artistic vein, which was always in photography and video when I was younger. So I decided to pick up a digital DSLR again and get back into it and started shooting different things. And after a while, somebody approached me and said, could you shoot this house for us? And I said, sure, how difficult can it be? and being an obsessive autodidactic person, I realized how hard it was and figured, well, we need to nail this better. So I started scouring the internet and basically self-learning. One thing leads to another. Meanwhile, more people ask me to shoot different sort of properties for different sort of purposes, and the ball is rolling. And I'm still on that ball. For me, every shoot that I do is I go in and I want that shoot to be the best shoot of my career. That's the shoot that's going to land me the next great gig with the next new fantastic client from somewhere. And that's just how I approach things and have since 10 years ago.
Tell me about some of the clients that you've had from the area that people might know.
I shoot a lot for luxury real estate, for luxury rental companies in the area, such as Marbella Mountain Resorts. I shoot for Swish. I've shot for Christie's. I shoot also for some people that aren't based here but do some work here. I recently did a shoot for Chris Turnbull's studios based in Belfast. Actually, I shot for them over in Portugal, but we'll be shooting another property for them here in Marbella very soon. I've shot for Norwegian interior designers doing work here, so it's an international group of clients, really. I've also shot for Sierra Blanca Estates. I shot their epic Marbella development early last year. So things of that nature. That's sort of representative of my client base. I tend to gravitate towards builders, developers, interior architects, but also real estate agents, of course, especially the more higher tier real estate agents.
Would it be accurate to say that apart from it probably being more enjoyable, you gravitate towards the higher end real estate side of things because you're obsessive, and from our last conversation, you said that you're not particularly speedy. You take your time to do things properly, and you would be probably working for free if you were doing it on a cheap property and a small thing. But you're not. Is that an accurate statement, do you think?
Yeah, I think you're homing in on the sort of photography that I do. I'm probably more of a boutique photographer, and those are the sort of clients that seek me out. Clients that value quality over quantity. I don't pursue doing 2-3 shoots today and producing 80 to 100 pictures per shoot. If I can go out from a half-day shoot with maybe 20 pictures in the bag, I think that's a pretty good production for the day. So I take my time. Yes.
And one of the things that I think is important to remember is that we think digitally these days in terms of websites and photography for videos for websites and for online platforms, but the work you do quite often is for offline, for print, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. For stands, for a shot for a client just recently is now in a fair in Holland, a real estate fair, and he's got a huge print behind him. I think it's 2 by 1 meters or even larger of a property that we shot for him. All the way from there to magazines, but you're right. The vast majority of pictures we shoot today are definitely for digital.
And you touched on the fact that you obviously started as a photographer, and over the years you've incorporated the videography aspect to it. Is that something that is now nearly always the case, that there's like a package type deal with photo and video, or I presume it depends what it's for now and who it's for?
It depends who it's for. If it's for interior designers, we don't usually do much video. They're usually more happy with just having the pictures. For real estate and rental properties, I do more and more video. Maybe of all the shoots, maybe a quarter to a third will involve video as well as pictures. I didn't do video until I first got into drone photography, and having the drone, it was interesting because a client said to me, I was doing aerial photography, and they said, well, can't you do video with that thing too? And I said, yeah, I can probably shoot some video with that thing also. So I did. And so we produced a really nice video on the drone footage. But since then, this was many years ago, I've incorporated the technical ability to do good interior videography as well with sliders and gimbals and all what have you.
So the right client for you is the client that is looking for super high quality, less is more, and that they may want to use it for multiple purposes. Is that sound about right?
Yeah, that's right. I often say that the photography that I do is the equivalent of slow food, but in the photography business. So, I put in a lot of effort into getting the right composition, staging that composition or what's in the frame properly, and lighting the scene very carefully. I add light, I subtract light that I'm not interested in, careful in controlling different color temperatures and so forth. So once I've actually produced a shot on location, easily 20 minutes can have passed by before we're really happy with what we're seeing through the camera. And then you'd have at least that amount of time, if not more, or even twice that amount of time in post-production after that. So usually a one-day shoot for me involves about at least 2 days worth of post-production afterwards.
And am I right in saying that you also do different types of workshops for various companies?
Yes, I do. I provide workshops for real estate agents. I've done several here on the coast to help their listing agents produce better photography on their own. A lot of real estate agents have their own camera equipment, basic camera equipment, a DSLR, tripod, and so forth. And so I've been giving the workshops to get more juice out of that equipment and learn to use it more effectively. And the same can be said about just iPhones and mobile devices, because you can take decent photographs if you know what you're doing with very simple equipment. The best camera is usually the one that you have on you.
it's unusual to talk to a professional photographer that doesn't want to shoot himself in the head when you mention an iPhone or something like that, and that is actually quite willing to give some of the knowledge to the ground. So
Yeah.
I think from our previous conversation, I'll put a link up or down or somewhere to that conversation about agents in particular taking photography and stuff in house. You're a strong believer that the photography and videography policy or concept for an agency, for most agencies, would be one that is layered. So for the top mansions, you get a top professional that is not going to be cheap, but it's going to be top quality. For the smaller, perhaps apartments, smaller listings, you still need something. So that's maybe something that you either get a different photographer that's maybe a bit cheaper and a bit more quick bangs, slam bam, thank you, ma'am. And then maybe in the day-to-day, going to open houses and stuff like that, you can use your team that are there on the ground. And that's something that I thought was very interesting, because most professionals tend to sort of strongly believe that you should just stay in, everybody should just go for the absolute best at all times. And it just seems a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah, no, you don't need to do that. I think a layered approach is good, especially when the real estate, when the company is larger. Go for a tiered approach. It would be difficult to have, if you want the best sort of quality for your highest level objects and listings, and yet you want to use that same photographer to cover an event, to shoot 30 apartments a month. It's going to be very difficult to reconcile that. From my perspective, it would be difficult to reconcile that because I'm not a volume photographer. So then why not use 2 or even 3 and use different ones? I do work with clients that do that. They work with multiple photographers. They use me for some of their listings or objects or properties, and they use other photographers for others. And that's fine. I have no issue with that at all. I think that's good. It's a question of the value add that you're looking at in terms of that particular listing. It's also a question of what the expectations are of the client base that you are pursuing with that particular listing.
What is the high season for photography? Because right now, this last 2 or 3 weeks, if you look at a weather forecast for Marbella, all I see are clouds and rain, which is unusual, isn't it? But what would you say is the peak season for your work?
Well, peak season are the winter months. So from fall up through to late spring is peak season for me. But then, of course, you got ups and downs. The last few weeks in Marbella have been difficult to work in because of the weather. So I right now I have a backlog of loads of projects that need to be photographed. So I expect that the first good day that we have, I'm going to be getting a lot of phone calls and people wanting to schedule that day. We'll have to space it out a bit. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's fantastic, Stefan. Thank you so much for the insights. And we did do a couple of other videos at your house where we discussed, hiring photographers and having photography services in-house and so on and so forth. So check those out in the links above or below, depending on what you're looking at. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Alfredo. Always a pleasure.